On September 9, 2005, at 12:45 p.m., the Orchard MRT station in Singapore was bustling as usual. Among the hustle and bustle near the exit, a blue and white sports bag caught the attention of a janitor. Finding it strange that no one had come to claim the bag almost 10 minutes later, he decided to open it to see what's inside and thought he could try to find the owner. As he cautiously unzipped the bag, he was met with the sight of a young girl's face, which startled him so much that he vomited on the spot. Hello, welcome to the Crime Documentary Files channel. After hearing to today's case, you'll understand that money can indeed end friendships. So, what really happened back then? Let's travel back in time to 2005 and go through the case from the start. In the afternoon at 1:53, the police arrived at the scene of the incident and sealed off the exits, preventing anyone from approaching. They carefully opened the bag to find, in addition to the pale face, 2 large black garbage bags, several small red plastic bags, and a copy of the previous day's Straits Times. Inside the bags were 4 limbs, but the torso was missing. Based on the thumbprint extracted from the victim's right arm, a match was quickly made to a maid from the Philippines named Jane Parangan La Puebla. Information indicated that she was working for a family in Singapore. The police contacted the employer to verify the situation, only to find out that Jane had gone missing since September 7th. The employer already reported the case yesterday and submitted a missing person report. At that time, there were about 140,000 foreign domestic workers in Singapore, most of whom were from the Philippines and Indonesia. In the afternoon, the police retrieved the CCTV footage near the subway station and organized 50 scouts, splitting into 3 groups to start the investigation. At 6:10 p.m., the police received another call. Someone found a black-wheeled suitcase full of flies near the MacRitchie Reservoir park, lying on the grass near the sidewalk a few meters away from the main road. The location was also only 5 kilometers away from the subway situation that morning. The caller claimed this route was very familiar to him, as it was his way to work. He distinctly remembered that there was no suitcase in the morning. The police felt something was not right as soon as they arrived at the scene. This suitcase was similar to the sports bag found in the morning, both large in size, appearing in crowded areas. They quickly unzipped it to confirm their suspicions, and as expected, inside was a large black garbage bag containing a female torso wrapped casually in newspapers. The new paper was also similar. It was the September 6th to 8th edition of the Straits Times newspaper. However, this time there was another crucial clue inside the bag, a copy of the International Pioneer Forum. The newspaper contained the name and detailed address of the recipient. The police immediately rushed to the 8th floor of an apartment building at the specified location with a search warrant. A couple from India lived there who claimed not to know Jane. They had only employed a Filipino maid named Gwen and thought maybe she knew Jane. Guen Garlejo Aguilar, born on April 19, 1976, in Iloilo Province, northern Philippines. She was married and left her husband and 2 sons to come to Singapore alone in late 2001. Although the maid's salary is not high, it can at least help with household expenses. When the police found her, Gwen avoided eye contact and appeared visibly nervous. Throughout the questioning, she maintained that she only knew Jane and had no idea of her whereabouts. The police then promptly presented the search warrant, which led to them solving the case that had caused panic nationwide. In the early morning of September 10, 2005, at 0040, Gwen was arrested on suspicion of murder. Let's take a look at what the police have found. There were blood stains on Gwen's mattress and floor, blood stains in a suitcase belonging to Gwen, just the right size to fit a person. In the kitchen sink cabinet, there was a red plastic bag, identical to the one containing Jane, an 18-centimeter long meat cleaver, an axe, and the employers confirmed that these items did not belong to them and they had never seen them before. Also found were shredded pieces of Jane's ID and a luggage tag from a black suitcase. Despite all this evidence, Gwen still denied the accusations, claiming that Jane did visit her on September 7th, but left quickly, and she did not know where Jane went afterwards. At 10:33 in the morning, Gwen's body examination report came out. She had abrasions on her neck, back, right shoulder, and left leg. There were hematoma on both forearms, left back, and left calf, while Jane had bruises, a hematoma, and a tear on her head and neck. There were bruises of various sizes from the thighs to the ankles on both legs, large bruises on the left elbow, and bite marks of 7 teeth on the right arm, which matched Gwen's dental records. The police reasonably suspected that there was a violent physical conflict between Jane and Gwen before the murder, which took place at Gwen's employer's home. The employer's family usually left early and returned late, so they did not notice the incident. Gwen hid Jane in a suitcase, and when there was no one at home 2 days later, she used a knife and an axe to deal with Jane's body, then carefully cleaned the bloodstains, although some still remained. The victim, Jane, born in 1979 in Bagabag, Nueva Vizcaya, Philippines, is 3 years younger than Gwen and was already married with a son. They both came to Singapore for work. She obtained a Filipino maid work permit on September 14, 2001. In March 2005, Jane and Gwen met through a mutual friend. Despite not working together, they quickly became close friends due to their similar ages. They would often make plans to take the same days off and meet up, just to see each other and help each other with the loneliness of being in a foreign land. Many of their acquaintances thought their bond resembled that of sisters. Therefore, everyone wondered why Gwen would harm Jane in such a cruel way. During that time, strangers at the Orchard MRT station couldn't help but whisper. Why did the two girls fight? Why did she have to chop her into pieces? Her head was in one place, her body in another. Was she cut to death? It's too scary. What exactly happened? Could it be a love triangle? Of course, most speculations focused on the two sisters, suggesting jealousy over a man. Some even claim to have seen them frequently with a tall, handsome man near the Orchard MRT station. However, the truth was not so complicated. On September 13th, Gwen revealed the truth. The reason she acted was simply because Jane owed her 2,000 Singapore dollars that she had not repaid. Back in the early days when the two first met, they were like long-lost sisters who shared everything. They would discuss intimate details of their lives, whether it was about conflicts with their husbands or longing for their children. They could resonate with each other. They would encourage each other, teach each other how to make more money, how to look prettier, and how to live better. There was no barrier between them, only sincerity and trust. Until one day, Jane suddenly came to Gwen saying that she urgently needed $2,000. Without hesitation, Gwen took out her hard-earned savings of $1,000, borrowed another $1,000 from someone, and gave Jane the full $2,000. It was so urgent that Gwen didn't know that the $1,000 was from a loan shark, with an interest of 20% to be paid every month. When Gwen learned about the high interest rate, she was shocked. Considering she only earned around $20 to $30 a day, she couldn't afford high interest like this. She quickly explained the situation to Jane, blaming herself for being careless and causing trouble for Jane. Jane reassured her that it was okay, that the principal amount would be repaid within a month. Gwen felt slightly relieved hearing this, but a month passed, and Jane hasn't repaid a single penny. The loan sharks called her every day demanding repayment. In a limbo, she had to use her own salary to cover the interest first. She thought she could make some money by selling the Jane's camera, and she could make up for the rest later. Unexpectedly, Jane changed since then. Seeing that Gwen could help her solve the problem, she felt completely relieved, as if the money had nothing to do with her. Gradually, when faced with Guen's urging phone calls, Jane would either not answer or just respond briefly before hanging up. Gwen invited her to meet up, but she kept making different excuses. While she didn't have any actual issues, Gwen was becoming increasingly distressed. Despite her good intentions to help, she found herself forced into debt. It kept growing like a snowball. She could barely sleep or eat properly, putting up with not only Jane's indifference, but also the threats from loan sharks. They claimed that if she didn't repay soon, they would take away her work permit and inform the employer, making it impossible for her to continue living in Singapore. Gwen lived in constant fear, as she hadn't sent money home for several months due to this situation. If she lost her job, what would happen to her child? Being increasingly distressed, these thoughts kept her awake every night. She could rest briefly by having short naps during the day, and she was suffering mentally. Perhaps sensing Gwen's situation, Jane came to visit her. On September 7th, 2005, at 12:35 noon, Jane knocked on the door of Gwen's employer. As long as they didn't talk about money, they were still laughing and chatting. It was lunchtime, and the employer wasn't home. The two of them started cooking and chatting in the kitchen. However, the conversation quickly turned to the topic of the 1,000 Singaporean dollars. When Gwen once again suggested Jane sell her camera to pay off her debt, Jane became extremely angry, blaming Gwen for constantly insisting on it. Gwen remained calm, easing the tense atmosphere, and Jane gradually calmed down. However, the issue wouldn't be resolved by avoiding it. The debt collector's call was suffocating Gwen, and she couldn't resolve the situation. So she persisted for a third time, insisting that Jane should sell the camera. Jane couldn't take it anymore and exploded into a fit of rage. Gwen was also unable to bear it any longer, and the two of them began to argue. The argument escalated to physical violence, with hair-pulling, biting, and the fight moving from the kitchen to the laundry room, then to the bedroom with bloodstains everywhere. In the midst of the chaos, Gwen bit Jane's right forearm, and Jane did the same back, both of them gripping each other's necks but with no intention of causing harm, only to force the other to stop. However, in the heat of the moment, Gwen had the upper hand as she found a pillow within reach of her left hand. Without hesitation, she pressed the pillow over Jane's face while using her right hand to choke her. Gwen didn't realize the severity until Jane stopped moving. Shocked, Gwen lifted the pillow, only to see Jane regained consciousness moments later. She could have stopped then, but instead, she pressed the pillow down again, this time for longer, until Jane stopped breathing. For the next 2 days, Gwen went to work as usual, already planning on dealing with the aftermath. On the 9th of September, she went to Mustafa Shopping Centre for a big shopping trip. We can look at the list together. A kitchen knife, an axe, canvas gloves, latex gloves, cleaning spray, large black trash bags, a bedsheet, a cushion, and 2 pillowcases were purchased. She even bought green wallpaper that matched her employer's home. Returning with a full shop at 9:30 in the morning, she went back to the apartment, tore up Jane's work permit, chopped, packaged, cleaned, and covered the bloodstains on the wall directly with wallpaper. Finally, she flipped the blood-stained mattress, put on the new bedsheet, changed the pillows, took the pillowcases, and left with a sports bag. At 12:35, Gwen grabbed her sports bag and got out of the taxi, then swiftly walked away from the bustling Orchard MRT station. At 1:55, she left the apartment again, this time with a black suitcase in hand, heading towards the MacRitchie Reservoir. From where Gwen dropped the body and the casually wrapped items in newspapers, it seems that she didn't plan to hide what she's done. Gwen's defense lawyer, Shashi Nathan, tried to provide an explanation, stating that she was ill. Shashi, a professional criminal litigation lawyer, recalled the intricacies of the case even after 17 years, emphasizing the importance of staying objective and rational in Gwen's defense to avoid impacting the relationship between the two countries, Singapore and Philippines. After his second meeting with Gwen on September 23rd, Shashi found that she did not premeditate the whole incident. Following a 4-hour discussion, he requested the court to assess Gwen's mental state. September 24th, the Filipino embassy in Singapore arranged for Buddhist monks to conduct a prayer and chanting ceremony for Jane in the Orchard Road area. Around 8:40 p.m. the next day, she was flown back to the Philippines, where thousands of people in Jane's hometown awaited to hold a 9-day wake for her. Local officials in Gwen's hometown have also called for presidential intervention in the case, fearing a diplomatic crisis akin to the Flor Contemplacion case in 1995, when Flor was executed, sparking a diplomatic crisis between the two countries. Both nations withdrew their respective ambassadors until relations normalized a year later. A similar case happened once again 10 years later, so both governments attached great importance to it. Given the sensitivity of the situation, Singaporean officials have emphasized ensuring Gwen receives fair treatment and were placing great importance on her mental assessment. After conducting 4 tests on her on October 15, 2005, the doctor provided a test report stating that Gwen had concealed depression, which usually ranges from mild to moderate, but Gwen's level was between moderate to severe. This means she has experienced serious emotional distress and functional impairment. The doctor emphasized that when Gwen recalled her relationship with Jane, from borrowing money to help Jane repay debts, to feeling anxious and depressed about killing Jane, the risk of Gwen committing another crime is low as long as she continues treatment. Recovery is expected within 6 to 12 months. On February 6th, the forensic examiner released the autopsy report. No toxic substances were detected in the blood or urine. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Multiple superficial wounds were found on the body, indicating signs of struggle before death. The body was damaged a day after death in a cruel manner. Due to the uneven cuts, it seems Gwen had to cut over and over again. This report sparked public outrage, but lawyer Nathan remained determined. He pointed out that Gwen did not start dealing with the body until a day later, which is crucial evidence suggesting no premeditation, but rather complications from an illness. Disassembling the body was not out of cold-bloodedness, but to eliminate evidence, and Gwen actively confessed to cooperate with the investigation. And she had no criminal record, so the prosecution should charge her with manslaughter instead of murder. Finally, before the trial, he successfully reduced Gwen's charge to manslaughter, which means Gwen will not face the death penalty. In May 18, 2006, the Singapore High Court began hearing this case. The defense on both sides discussed the specific sentencing of Gwen. The judge first recognized the psychiatric evaluation. The doctor's prediction was that the probability of Gwen being an offender again was low, but Gwen had at least 2 chances to avoid the tragedy, both of which she gave up. Ultimately, she resolved it in an extreme way, so one should not take it lightly. Nathan also presented a plea letter from the mayor of Gwen's hometown in court. The mayor promised that once Gwen's imprisonment ended, she would receive support from her hometown to ensure her life is stable. Based on these evidence, the verdict was not declared in court. On May 19th, Judge Raja said that although culpable homicide can carry a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, her condition seemed to have worsened as she chose 2 public places to abandon the corpses. During the time of arrest, Gwen's mental state gradually improved, and she also received care and support from her husband. according to reports, the probability of Gwen having a retrial is indeed very low. It is worth mentioning that the mayor of her hometown has been guaranteeing and pleading for her. Ultimately, taking into account all factors, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Gwen was released in September 2015. Many people believe that a 10-year prison sentence is far from enough, but there are also those who think that each case has its own uniqueness. Comparing outcomes directly is not fair. So, what's your opinion on today's story? That's all for today. If you enjoy watching my videos, you can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any videos. See you next time.